dark, no one hears you. In the silence, the worm forgets you. But the shadows, they remember.
You hear that? That's real silence, kid. Not the one where the room's quiet or no one's talking. Nah, real silence is where the world forgets you existed. Where your voice echoes in your own skull and dies there alone. You want to talk about pain? About being invisible while bleeding inside? About watching the world applaud the liars while the honest ones get buried in the dirt they refuse to eat? I've been there. Hell, I built my damn throne there. They say silence is golden. What a joke. Silence is cold. It's the graveyard of screams that were never answered. It's where truth goes to rot because no one wants to hear it. You were kind, weren't you? Gave everything, spoke gently, forgave the unforgivable, hoping one day, just one damn day, someone would see the fire you were hiding behind your smile. But no. They saw your silence as weakness, your stillness as defeat, your calm as submission. But let me tell you something cruel, something real. Silence ain't weakness, sweetheart. It's a loaded gun. It's the final warning before the storm hits. They don't get it. They never will. You could be bleeding out and they walk over your body like you were a crack in the sidewalk. You stop explaining yourself and suddenly they panic. Why aren't you reacting? Because, kid, your silence became louder than your words ever were. That's real power, not noise, not yelling, not tantrums. Power is when you say nothing, and yet they crumble wondering what you're thinking. Power is when you disappear and suddenly the room feels empty, even if it's full. See, most people, they talk a lot, but the real ones, they observe, they feel, they calculate, and when they stop talking, the world loses access to something sacred. Your silence is sacred. It's a grave where your pain is buried, and no one deserves to dig it back up. Let them miss you. Let them wonder. You were the real one. You listened when they cried. You supported when they lied. You showed up when they forgot your name. And now you disappear like smoke, and they choke on the loss. That's the cost of disrespect. Let me tell you what happens when the good ones fall silent. The world starts shaking. Because deep down, they know. When the quiet ones break, they don't scream, they burn. Fire don't make noise while it consumes, it just devours. And that's who you've become. A quiet fire. No more begging to be heard. No more offering your heart to people with claws. No more turning your pain into poetry just so they can scroll past it. No more. They fed on your light for too long. And now the lights are off. And they're afraid of the dark. You know what's funny? They always come back when you're gone. When you stop answering, when your silence starts screaming in the back of their minds at 3 a.m., that's when regret kicks in. Not when they were hurting you, not when they lied, but when they realize you stopped reacting. Because when someone who loves deeply stops talking, it means they've already left in their mind. They've already buried the connection, and no apology, no paragraph, no fake tears can resurrect what they killed in you. That silence, it's not a wall, it's a gravestone. You stayed too long, that's the truth. You kept justifying their chaos, calling it love. You blamed yourself for their absence. You questioned your worth because they couldn't see it. But listen to me. When someone's blind, it ain't your fault they can't see gold. They'll touch rust and call it treasure because they never had real in their hands before. You were real. Too real. And that scared them. That's why they tried to shrink you. That's why they ignored your depth and danced with the shallow. Because they knew if they looked into your eyes too long, they'd have to confront themselves. Don't give them your voice anymore. Don't give them your pain wrapped in soft words. Don't give them the comfort of your explanations. You owe them nothing. Not even a goodbye. Because silence isn't revenge. It's healing. It's choosing yourself when no one else would. It's putting flowers on your own grave and walking away reborn. They never knew what they had until it stopped speaking, until the silence became louder than the lies they fed themselves.
Real silence. It don't beg, it don't chase, it don't break. It just walks, and they never hear from it again until it's too late.
They'll say you changed. Of course they will. That's their only weapon when silence strips away the illusion. They'll say you're cold now, distant, heartless. But they won't talk about what made you that way. They won't mention the nights you stayed up wondering what was wrong with you, trying to fix yourself for people who were breaking you on purpose. They won't talk about how you swallowed your pride, killed your ego, and gave chances like they were candy to people who never even deserved eye contact. Nah. They'll forget all that. Because it's easier to blame the silence than admit they caused it. But deep down, they know. Oh, they know. Your silence is their mirror now, and they hate what they see. Let me explain this slowly. Real silence is a final act. It ain't passive. It's the executioner's blade after the verdict's been passed. And when someone like you, someone soft, someone loyal, someone who gave everything with a pure heart, when you go quiet, it means something died. Not just inside you, but inside the bond. You don't just stop talking. You stop hoping. You stop believing they'll change. You stop imagining the better version of them. You stop dreaming about closure. And that right there, that's the funeral. That's the part where they start screaming, "Come back!" But it's already too late. The flowers are wilted. The door is shut. The silence has moved in like winter, and it's not leaving. I know what you're thinking, but I don't want to be cold. You won't be. You'll just stop being warm to those who only visited when they needed your fire. There's a difference. Your silence doesn't mean you're bitter. It means you're done bleeding for people who wouldn't even hand you a damn bandage. It means your peace matters now. And yeah, it might feel lonely at first. The quiet always does. You'll question yourself. You'll scroll through old conversations trying to see where it went wrong. You'll miss them. Not who they were, but who you imagined they could have been. That's the hardest part. Mourning someone who's still alive, but dead to your spirit. That's real grief. That's the cost of loving wrong people too deeply. You ever notice how loud the world becomes when you stop explaining yourself? Suddenly everyone's a detective. Suddenly they care. Suddenly they want answers. But not because they care about your healing. No. They care about their comfort. Your silence disrupts them. It haunts them. You not reacting anymore, it messes with their control. Because people like that, they feed off your reaction. Your pain was their entertainment. Your vulnerability was their stage. And now the curtain's dropped. The actor left, the show's over, and all they've got is empty seats and the echo of their own guilt. You were the story they thought they'd keep rereading. Until you close the book. And now they're stuck on the last chapter, fingers trembling, trying to rewrite the ending. But silence doesn't give rewrites. It gives consequences. It gives distance. It gives them the reality they begged for when they ignored your presence. You think people walk away and forget? No. Some do. The shallow ones. The ones who never saw your soul to begin with. But the others, the ones who knew, the ones who felt it deep down and still chose to break it, oh, they remember. Every single day. You'll notice something weird too. The more silent you become, the more people talk about you. They'll invent stories, create lies, paint you as the villain. Because silence doesn't give them a defense, so they build one. But let them talk. Let them choke on their own gossip. Because the truth doesn't need to shout. It just survives. Quietly. In your eyes. In your progress. In your peace. You're not who you were. That person, that version of you that begged to be understood, that cried for closure, that explained their pain in paragraphs just to get one word back. Gone. Buried. Replaced by someone stronger, someone dangerous, someone who finally realized that peace is louder than any scream. You did your part. More than your part. You listened. You stayed. You forgave the unforgivable. And what did it give you? Scars. Not on your skin, but on your spirit. Invisible wounds that bled in silence. And now you're silent by choice. And that scares them. Because when a loud soul goes quiet, it's not because they're weak. It's because they've leveled up. You've grown past the need to prove yourself. You've matured beyond the drama. You've embraced solitude like a weapon. You sit in silence and the room starts shaking. You say nothing and the truth starts screaming inside them. That's real silence. That's who you are now. You ain't broken. You're just done speaking. And sometimes that's the most dangerous version of yourself. You know, they never expect it. Not from someone like you. That's the twist. They expect the loud ones to leave, the chaotic ones, the unpredictable ones. But you, you were consistent. You were always there. That's what they banked on. They built their comfort around your presence like it was furniture. Always assumed it would be there. They mistook your patience for weakness, your loyalty for foolishness, your silence for submission. But what they didn't understand is that even a quiet heart has a breaking point, and once it hits that line, it doesn't explode. It vanishes, quietly, completely, and no one sees it coming. Let me put it this way. Imagine a garden, beautiful, peaceful, but no one waters it, no one cares. They walk on it with muddy shoes, pluck the flowers, throw trash in the soil. But the garden, it doesn't scream. It doesn't throw a tantrum. It just withers, slowly, petal by petal, until one day it's gone. And then they return holding seeds, buckets of water, and guilt in their eyes. But it's too late. The soil's dry, the ground's closed, the silence has claimed it. That garden is you. That's the silence you're in now. And that's why it hurts like hell. Pain doesn't always come from betrayal. Sometimes it comes from knowing you were never truly seen. You could be the light in someone's darkest night, and they'll still curse the dawn because it's too bright. You could be the calm in their storm, and they'll still crave thunder. You could give love, understanding, effort, and they'll treat it like background noise until it stops. And suddenly they're scrambling, calling your name in rooms you no longer enter. That's the cruelty of it. They don't realize what they had until your silence turns into absence. And the worst part, they'll move on. For a while. They'll distract themselves, maybe replace you with noise. But silence has a way of creeping back in. Late at night, when their distractions sleep and the fake smiles fade, that's when your silence hits the hardest. That's when they remember your laugh, your patience, your words, and they reach for their phone, but stop halfway because they know They killed the part of you that would have answered. That's the moment real regret is born. That's the moment they finally understand what silence sounds like. Not quiet, not peace, but guilt. But you don't owe them a single word, not even a whisper. Let the silence be the closure. Let their own thoughts torment them with what ifs and why didn't I? You're not here to be someone's second chance. You're not a rehab center for broken loyalty. You're not a chapter they can reread whenever their new stories fail. No. You're the end of the story they wrote in ink, but never bothered to read. And now it's closed. And the silence, it's louder than ever. And it's beautiful. You know what silence taught you? Power. You found your worth not in words, but in walking away. You stopped explaining yourself and finally heard your own thoughts. You realized your peace was more valuable than their presence. And now, you don't react. Not because you don't care, but because you finally care about yourself more. You protect your energy like a kingdom now. You don't let just anyone in. And if they think that's cruel, let them. Because they weren't the ones rebuilding you in the dark. They weren't there when you cried with a pillow over your face just to muffle the sound. They weren't there when your silence was your only friend. But you were. You showed up. And that silence, it didn't destroy you, it shaped you. So wear your silence like armor. Don't flinch when they provoke you. Don't respond to the bait. Don't explain your distance. Let them feel the weight of your absence. Let them taste the silence they created. Because you're not bitter. You're just done. You're not angry. You're just awakened. And now they can only watch from a distance as you grow in silence, as you shine without noise, as you become everything they doubted, without ever saying a damn word.
And when they finally whisper your name in the dark, when their thoughts scream louder than their laughter used to, when they sit in the same silence they left you in, remember this. You didn't lose them, they lost you. And silence was your witness.
You see, the truth is, most people don't know how to handle a soul like yours. You weren't just another conversation, another option, another temporary fix for their loneliness. You were a mirror, kid. And people hate mirrors. Not because of what they reflect, but because of what they can't lie to. You showed them who they really were. You gave them kindness they never earned. You offered depth in a world drowning in surface, and they couldn't stand it. You held their broken pieces like sacred glass, hoping maybe, just maybe, they'd try to heal, but they didn't. They blamed you for bleeding. They looked at your silence as a betrayal, when really, it was the only mercy you had left to give. Funny thing about silence, it forces them to hear everything they tried to mute. Their actions, their patterns, their guilt. It's a brutal mirror, and that's why they run from it. That's why they fill their days with noise. New people, new lies, new escapes. But it catches up. Always does. Because the silence you left behind, it doesn't fade. It echoes in their laughter, in their solitude, in their regret. Every joke feels hollow, every night feels colder, and every reflection looks a little emptier. That's your absence working like a ghost in their life. They feel you, but they can't reach you. And that drives people insane.
And they'll never admit it. Oh no. Their pride won't let them.
They'll post their fake smiles, say they're doing great, act unbothered, but you'll notice something. They'll start watching your moves. Quietly. Secretly. They'll check your updates. They'll ask about you through others. They'll sit in the shadows, praying you'll say something, anything. Just a word. Just a sign that you still care. But that's the beauty of real silence. It doesn't respond to crumbs. It doesn't come back for closure. It leaves, heals, and rebuilds. Somewhere far away from the ruins. You didn't leave because you were weak. You left because you were strong enough to stop justifying being hurt, strong enough to let them sit in the silence they created. You see, you can scream 1,000 times and no one hears you. But go silent once, and everyone wants to know why. That's the power you carry now. Your silence holds weight. It changes rooms. It ends cycles. It tells the truth no voice could ever articulate. And that's what they never expected from you. They thought they'd always have access to your warmth, your forgiveness, your energy. They didn't realize they were borrowing from a soul that was already exhausted. And now that you're gone, they're starving. But your table's closed.
But I know there are nights when that silence gets heavy. When you miss what you deserved, not what you had. When you remember their laugh, their eyes, the small things. That's grief talking, not weakness. Grief is just love with nowhere to go. And when you're someone who gave deeply, that silence becomes a battlefield. But here's what you do. Sit in it. Feel it. Let it wash over you like a cold wave. Because once you survive that silence, nothing, and I mean nothing, can break you again. You become untouchable, unreadable, and that scares the hell out of them. You see, they had a version of you no one will ever meet again. That version that answered every call, forgave every wound, believed every lie, waited patiently through every silence. That version, dead. Buried beneath every time they disrespected your presence and expected your loyalty. Now you speak in actions. Now you let your absence do the talking. Now you walk with silence as your shadow and peace as your crown. You don't chase, you don't explain, you don't beg. You just become. And when they finally see what they lost, let that silence be the loudest "I told you so" the world has ever heard.
You know what the cruelest part of all this is? They thought your silence was weakness. That not responding meant they won. That walking away meant you broke. But here you are, still breathing, still building, still standing, quietly, stronger than ever. And that strength, that quiet, unshakable calm, that's what they envy now, because nothing screams louder than someone who no longer cares to explain their worth. Nothing hits harder than silence from someone who once made noise for your sake. You're not bitter, you're just done. And that's what they can't understand. That's what keeps them up at night.
They always think you'll return. That's the delusion. They think silence is temporary, that it's a phase, a punishment, something you're doing to make them feel bad, not something that came from years of swallowing your pain, digesting betrayal, and still showing up. What they'll never get is that real silence, your silence, is not a tactic, it's a transformation. It's what's left when the last bit of faith you had dies. And once it dies, there's no resurrection. There's no part two. There's just nothing. A cold, clean nothingness that feels like peace to you and hell to them. Let me break it down. You didn't walk away to teach them a lesson. You walked away because you were tired of sitting in a classroom built from lies. You kept raising your hand, asking for answers, asking for respect, asking for consistency, and all they gave you were excuses. You tolerated storms with a smile, you wiped tears and swallowed yours, you defended them when they stabbed you. You stayed longer than any sane person should have. But your silence now, it's not revenge, it's the result. The final result of too much noise that never meant anything. Their noise, their fake promises, their "I'll do better" speeches followed by nothing. Now they sit in the same silence they made you sleep in. The silence they thought you'd never recover from. But the thing is, you did recover. And that recovery, it didn't come with fireworks or announcements. It came quietly, like healing always does. You rebuilt slowly, privately, while they mocked you, replaced you, ignored you. While they thought you were losing, you were learning. You were evolving. And by the time they turned around hoping to find that same soft soul waiting, you were gone. Emotionally, spiritually, energetically. Gone. They'll call it a phase. Then they'll call it an attitude. And finally, they'll call it betrayal. But they'll never call it what it really is. Growth. Because to admit that would mean accepting they lost someone valuable. And their ego, it's allergic to the truth. But the silence will keep reminding them. Every time they meet someone new, they'll compare them to you. Every time they hear your name, they'll flinch. And every time they see you smiling without them, they'll die a little more inside. Quietly, just like how you died when they made you feel replaceable. There's no satisfaction in that, though, is there? That's the truth. You think revenge will feel good. You think seeing them suffer will heal you. But it doesn't.
What heals you is realizing you don't need anything from them anymore. Not even recognition. Not even closure. You don't need them to admit what they did. You don't need them to understand. You just need silence and peace and distance. And damn it, you earned all three. You earned the right to be untouchable now. Let them wonder where you went. Let them guess why you changed. Let them drown in assumptions and guilt and their own made-up versions of the story. You don't owe them your side anymore. You don't owe them anything. Not after what they made you feel. Not after the nights you questioned your worth because of their silence. Now it's their turn. Now they stare at a screen, waiting for your name to appear. But it doesn't. And it won't. You see, there's a kind of silence that shouts louder than rage ever could. A silence that says, I've seen enough. A silence that ends wars, kills hope, and starts healing all at once. That's the silence you've chosen now. And you should be proud. Because it takes strength to speak. But it takes godlike discipline to stay silent when every part of you still has something to say. That's not weakness. That's mastery. That's control. That's you becoming untouchable. So when they say you've changed, say nothing. When they try to provoke you, bait you, poke the sleeping soul you buried, stay silent. Because silence, real silence, doesn't just break people. It unmasks them. It shows them what they really were when you were still trying to love them. You know what's cruel? You'll never get a thank you. Not a real one. Not for the nights you stayed up listening to their storms while you were drowning in your own. Not for the times you held your tongue so they wouldn't feel small even when they belittled you. Not for the patience, not for the loyalty, not for the way you loved them even while they were handing pieces of you to people who hadn't earned your silence, let alone your voice. That's what hurts the most. Not just what they did, but how they walked away from everything you gave without even glancing back. As if your love was a phase. As if your soul was a disposable chapter, as if you were forgettable. But you're not. You never were. And now they know that. Now that you've gone quiet, they're starting to hear everything they muted. Now that your name doesn't light up their phone, they feel the void they thought someone else could fill. But no one can be you. No one can recreate your silence. That kind of silence, it comes from survival, from dying in 1,000 ways and still waking up, from watching people you trusted turn their backs, then blaming you for standing alone. That kind of silence is earned, and they'll never touch it. Let them find replacements. Let them chase noise. Let them build new stories with new people. But there will always be a line, a crack, a moment when it hits them, in the middle of a laugh, in the middle of a kiss, in the middle of pretending they never needed you. That voice inside, it'll whisper, you had something real, and you destroyed it. That whisper will follow them into every room. It'll sleep beside them, eat with them, drive with them. It'll live in the silence you left behind. You see, you're not haunting them. Their conscience is. And you'll start healing in ways they'll never see, quietly, privately. You'll walk into rooms without feeling small. You'll speak only when it's worth it. You'll build walls not to keep people out, but to filter who gets in. You'll stop explaining your pain. You'll stop begging to be understood, because the truth is, when you love someone louder than they love themselves, they mistake it for weakness. But when you go silent, that's when the lesson begins. That's when they realize they weren't strong enough to match your depth. That they were swimming in shallow waters while you were drowning in oceans they never even bothered to explore. Silence is where you become dangerous. Not reckless, not violent, just unreadable. And that scares them. Because when someone like you, kind, consistent, genuine, goes quiet, people know they messed up. You didn't disappear to punish them. You disappeared because you finally realized your worth isn't up for debate. That being understood by those who refuse to listen is not love. It's torment. And you've had enough torment for a lifetime. And yeah, you'll miss them. You'll miss who you thought they were. That's the hardest truth. That you weren't in love with them. You were in love with the version of them you created in your head. You saw the potential. You saw the light. But they chose darkness. They chose silence, not the healing kind, but the dismissive, neglectful kind. And now you've chosen silence too. But yours is redemption. Theirs was disrespect. You can forgive someone and still never want them near you again. You can love someone and still walk away, because love without respect is poison. And every time they silenced your truth, they fed you another drop of that poison, but you survived it. You crawled through it. And now, in your silence, there's power. You don't need to scream, cry, or plead. You just exist, strong, unbothered, and distant. And nothing terrifies someone more than being locked out of the peace they once disturbed. So when they whisper your name in the dark, when they replay your laughter, your words, your warmth, they won't miss you. They'll miss what they destroyed. And that's the kind of silence that echoes for a lifetime. You want to know what real silence does? It rewrites you. Quietly, ruthlessly. It takes that old version of you, the one that used to overthink every word, every tone, every pause in someone's sentence, and it kills it mercilessly. Because silence is the funeral of the overgiver. It's where the people pleaser dies, and something colder, something cleaner, something more calculated is born. You don't chase anymore, you don't explain, you just observe. You sit in rooms and read people like books, front to back without even opening your mouth. You speak less, but your presence, it speaks volumes. That's what silence does. It doesn't just protect you, it makes you dangerous. You ever seen someone panic in the presence of someone they hurt? That twitch in their eye, that sudden shift in energy, that awkward smile, that's fear. Not fear of you, but fear of what they lost. They'll act like they don't care, pretend it didn't affect them, say you just disappeared. But the truth is they're drowning in the silence you left. Because when someone is used to your light, your laughter, your love, and suddenly it's gone, it doesn't feel like peace, it feels like death. And they try to replace you with noise, with people, with distraction. But nothing feels the same, because nothing was ever that real. And now you don't need to prove it. You don't need to post about your healing. You don't need to scream your growth to the world. You let them see it in your distance, in your peace, in the way you no longer flinch when they enter the room. You let them feel it when you walk by and don't even look their way. That silence is louder than any revenge you could have planned. Because the real punishment is your indifference. They'll try to come back. Of course they will. Regret's a funny little ghost. It always shows up late. And when it does, it brings fake apologies, long messages, the "I've changed" anthem. But by then, you're fluent in silence. You don't respond to words anymore. You watch actions, and theirs, still weak, still selfish, still stained with the same carelessness they served you back then. So you'll look at their message and put your phone down. Not because you hate them, but because you've grown past needing answers from people who never listened the first time. You want power? Here it is. Power is walking away without closure. Power is rebuilding yourself without needing their apology. Power is staying silent while they beg for the version of you they buried. Power is smiling and meaning it, not because you forgot, but because you finally remembered who the hell you are. You were never the broken one. You were the healer, the giver, the consistent, the anchor. And they weren't ready for that, so they fumbled you. And now they have to live with that silence forever. But don't let the silence turn you into stone. That's the balance. Learn to love again, but smarter. Trust again, but slower. Give again, but never everything. Your silence taught you how to protect your peace. Keep that. Let it be the filter that keeps the parasites out. Let it be the sword that slices through manipulation. Let it be the throne you sit on now, because you earned it with every scar, with every night you cried alone, with every time you bit your tongue and smiled through betrayal. You earned this version of yourself. And the people who are meant for you, they'll respect that silence. They won't force you to explain why you're guarded. They'll understand it. They'll earn your trust, not demand it. And when that happens, when the right ones come, your silence will finally feel like home. Not a cage, not a punishment, but peace, real peace, the kind that doesn't need to be explained. So here we are, but not lonely. Quiet, but not weak. At peace, but still on fire. You're not waiting anymore, not hoping, not looking back. You're moving in silence like a storm no one sees coming. And when they hear your name in the future, they'll pause, they'll remember, and the silence will speak again. Not out of anger, not out of hate, but as a reminder of what they lost when they played with something real. You know, there's something poetic about it all. How the very thing they feared the least, your silence, became the thing that punished them the most. No slamming doors, no final message, no long speeches, just gone, vanished. And that haunts them. Because humans, selfish ones, they can handle chaos. They expect yelling, expect drama, expect closure wrapped in pain. But silence, real silence, that's unfamiliar territory. That's where their demons get louder. That's where their thoughts echo. That's where they realize they weren't the victim. They were the villain in a story they never even bothered to read. And now they're left with the memory of you, a ghost that doesn't haunt, but reminds every moment you were there and they looked past you. Every time you needed a shoulder and they gave you distance. Every smile they didn't return. It replays like a broken record over and over until they can't pretend it didn't matter, until they admit quietly to themselves that they lost someone rare. Not because you changed, but because they didn't. And now your silence is a mirror they can't turn away from. No matter how far they run, your absence stays stuck to them like their own shadow. But let me tell you something else, something cold and true. You won't get the moment you imagine. You won't get the tearful apology, the "I finally understand." No. People rarely give you closure. They give you silence until they see you've healed. Then they try to return, not because they love you, but because they hate losing control. But by then it's too late. You don't feel the same. You don't ache for them anymore. You don't sit at night wondering what you did wrong, because your silence, it became your answer. Your peace became your revenge, and your growth, that became their punishment. It's a strange feeling, isn't it? Knowing someone out there is carrying your silence like a wound. They can't talk about it, can't confess it, can't heal it. Because it's not just silence, it's judgment. Silent judgment that says, I gave you everything and you wasted it. And that message, kid, it screams without making a sound. They'll hear it in every quiet room, in every version of you they try to find in someone else. They'll touch another soul and realize no one listens like you did. No one stays like you stayed. No one forgives like you forgave. They'll feel it, and they'll fall apart. Quietly. Like you did once. But you're not falling anymore. That's the difference. Your silence isn't a grave, it's a rebirth. You died, yes, but not in the way they thought. You buried your softness, you cremated your patience, you engraved your love with conditions now. And that new version of you, it doesn't beg, it doesn't explain, it doesn't lower itself to be heard. You walk now, not to be followed, but to never be caught again. You don't look back, because silence is a straight road with no rear-view mirrors. And even if they call, even if they scream, even if they finally mean it, you don't go back to noise after finding peace in the quiet. You see silence as a choice now, not a reaction, not a phase, a conscious, powerful choice. It's the boundary you built from the rubble. The wall they can't climb anymore, the language only the wise understand, and for those who don't, let them wonder. Let them live with the version of you in their memories, because that's all they're worthy of now, memories, not moments, not second chances, just flashes of what they once had and will never have again. And you? Keep building in silence. Keep healing in silence. Keep loving yourself in silence. Because one day someone will meet you and they'll listen. They'll understand your quiet. They'll respect your distance. They'll see the war you fought without ever raising your voice. And they'll whisper to you. Not because they're weak, but because they know that real souls don't shout. They speak in presence, in consistency, in stillness. That day will come. But until then, stay silent, stay calm. Stay dangerous. So here it is, the last chapter. No noise, no grand finale, just silence, dressed in truth. Maybe that's the part they'll never understand, that silence isn't weakness. It's not running. It's not fear. It's the highest form of control. It's what happens when you've said everything, shown everything, given everything, and they still didn't listen. You stop speaking, not out of bitterness, but out of self-respect. You realize the words you once used to save people are now the same words you're using to save yourself. By not using them at all. You want to know what terrifies people the most? It's not losing you when you're angry. No, it's losing you when you're calm, when your hands stop shaking, when your chest stops burning, when your eyes stop hoping. That's when they feel it. That eerie calm in your silence, it hits like a warning before a storm. But this time, the storm never comes. Because you left, quietly. No closure, no chaos. Just an empty space they'll never fill again. That space, that silence, it'll echo in their mind until the day they forget how to pretend it didn't matter. And still you'll never wish them harm. That's the part that breaks them later. When they realize you could have exposed them, destroyed them, dragged their name through the dirt. life with that mercy like a sentence, a life sentence. Every time they look back, they'll remember you could have screamed, but you whispered. You could have burned bridges, but you walked away. And that silence, it speaks louder than 1,000 angry words ever could. They say real strength is in restraint. But let me tell you what real strength is. Real strength is watching someone destroy you, watching them lie to your face, watching them erase you from their world, then sitting there, saying nothing, doing nothing, letting them believe they won, and then quietly rebuilding yourself. Stronger, smarter, colder, wiser. That's real strength. That's silence. The kind that doesn't tremble, it watches, it waits, it evolves, and when it returns, it doesn't come back for revenge. It comes back with purpose. You'll walk into rooms now and feel everything. You'll sense the shift, the tension, the way your silence makes people uncomfortable. That's because your energy no longer chases peace. It is peace. And some people, they can't handle that. They'll either rise to meet you or collapse beneath their own guilt. Either way, you don't flinch. You don't lower your voice. You don't offer comfort to chaos. You sit still, like a statue carved by every wound that never got an apology. And when they ask about you, because they will, they always do, people will only shrug and say, he changed. But they'll never say why. They'll never say we pushed him too far. They'll never say we killed the version of him that loved us. They'll never say our silence created his. But you'll know. And that's enough. Ian, you're not the same anymore. That soft voice that used to beg for attention, silent. That smile that forgave too easily, gone. That heart that cracked open every time someone needed a place to rest, armored. And the new you, the version built from broken glass and silent nights, it doesn't break anymore. It doesn't explain. It doesn't bend. It just moves forward, quiet, strong, watchful. And that's your greatest revenge, that you healed, and they had to watch it happen without access. So if you're ever tempted to speak, to explain, to reach out and remind them of the good you gave, don't. That version of you is gone. Let the silence do what it's meant to do. Let it burn. Let it haunt. Let it whisper the truth they refused to hear. And you stay quiet. Not because you're scared, not because you're numb, but because you finally learned some people aren't worth your voice. Some people don't deserve a goodbye. Some people only understand silence. This is where it ends, kid. No more justifying. No more waiting, no more hoping. The world took your voice and turned it into background noise. Now you turn their noise into your background. Let them talk, let them wonder, let them sit in their drama while you sit in your peace. You don't need to prove anything anymore. The version of you that stayed quiet and still loved them, that was the strongest version of you they'll ever know. Let them feel it. Let them remember. Let your silence speak for you forever.